Tav Kuf Chaf Hey Amud Aleph, right at the top. Amar Baram Dorim Ar Shmuel Krumi Shel Machselas Mutal L'Taltal B'Shabbos. Shreds from a mat, from a reed mat, it's mutter to be metaltal on Shabbos. It's not muksim. My time, what's the reason? Amar Rava Bar Hamdur Asperli explained it to me. Machselas Guf L'Maya Chazeh. What is the mat itself used for? L'Chsuya Be'Chsuya Be'Afret, to cover dirt with it, or dust with it. Hanename Chazon L'Chsuya B'Tinaifis. This is also has the same use. You can cover dirt with it. So therefore, it's not muksa because it has the same use. Taisus explains that it's not really necessary that it has the same use, even if it doesn't have the same use. It's just saying the Rav Chadamil said it happens to be that this is what it's used for and has the same use. But according to Taisus, even if it didn't have the same use, even if it had a different use, as long as it's usable, it's not muksa. The Rashba says, however, no, it's davka. It says dafka that has the same use, because even though other things don't have to have the same use, but that's because they have a certain chashivas. These remnants, these shreddings from the mat are normally worthless. People throw it away right away, immediately they throw it away. So over here he says, unless it has the same use, unless that it tore on Shabbos, and it has the same use, otherwise it would be considered to be completely useless, and it would be muksa. That's it. Taisus machlekes between Taisus and the Rashba. Amar Rav Zera Amar Ara Shiore Presumius also Taltum Shabbos. The remnants of a talis, you're not allowed to be metaltal on Shabbos. They're muksa. Amar Abaye b'matloni shein bam sholosh shol sholosh. It's only when these pieces, these patches, don't have sholosh sholosh. They're not done the size. They don't have the minimum size of 3 by 3 etzboyas, which can't be used not for poor people or wealthy people. But if it had 3 by 3 etzboyas or more, even the wealthy people would not use it, but poor people would use it for a patch, and therefore it has value. The cloth has value, therefore it's not muksa. So Rashi explains over here, we're talking about a talis. Now, why do we need sholosh sholosh? Why does it have to be used for a patch? Why can't we say you'll cover dirt with it, just like we say by the cases of the case of the reed, the previous case? So Rashi explains because it's a talis, because it's a talis and you won't use it. It's not the kovedik to use something that was originally a talis to use it to cover dirt. So it has to have an alternate use as a patch. If it doesn't have 3 by 3 etzboyas, you won't use it for a patch. Taner Rabbanan Shivrei Taner Yoshan. If you have the broken pieces of an old taner, meaning a taner, it means in those days we're referring to a taner that was made out of cheres. It was heated up at least once, so that's the definition of old. It was used at least once. Once it's fired up at least once, it becomes hardened, and now the broken pieces are usable. So the Shivrei Taner Yoshan Haring Techol Kelim Yatolim B'Chatzir. They're like all other kelim, that it's not muksa, and that it can be carried in the chatzir. Taisa says it doesn't mean dafki in the chatzir, because these types of kelim that we said that have a use, as we explained before, are not muksa even in the Karmelis and Rishus Rabbit. But it's like other kelim that are nitolim. Divrei Amir, Rav Yehuda Imer ein nitolim. He says they're muksa. Hey, Rav Yosef Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Yaakov el Shivrei Taner Yoshan, who's made on the broken pieces of a Taner Yoshan shenitolim b'Shabbos, that they are not muksa, they're nitolim b'Shabbos. V'al kisuyev, and on the lids, on the covering, shein tzorach beis yad. It doesn't need a handle. Even without a handle, it's usable and it's not muksa. But Ma'ika Miflagi, what is this machlekes over here? Omar Abaye ba'oisen mein malocha vein oisen mein malach l'kam Miflagi. It's the machlekes that we were discussing before, whether the broken piece has to have the same use, whether it has to retain the same use as it had when it was whole. And both Rameir and Yehuda are going according to their shitas, whether you need main malach or ein malach done. Maskiv Rava, ask you Kashi, Hachi, Adam Iflagi Tanur. If that's the case, why are they arguing on the broken pieces of the Tanur? Liflagi B'Shiva Kalim Ba'alma. Why are they arguing on Davka Tanur? That's it. The general machlekes. Any Shivri Kalim. Why is it specifically Lagabi the Tanur? Elamar Rava, B'Shivri the high Tanner Kamefliga. They're talking about a specific Tanner. This now we learn Nasa al Pi Abor Oil Pi Aduz. If he put the oven that we're talking about over here is a cylinder that was put into a pit or into a cavity. So the fire they made a fire on the ground. They put the cylinder in the hole, the fire's on the ground, and they put the dough, stuck it to the side of the cylinder. So nasal pi abor pi does nasan sham evet. Now, in order to secure that cylinder in the hole, they put a small stone in there to secure it in place. So now it's secure in place. Rav Yehuda says that if the fire is strong enough and if the cylinder is close enough to the ground, that if you light the fire on the ground, now even though the cylinder doesn't have a bottom, and if it's not on the ground, but if the fire is on the ground and it's close enough and the fire is strong enough, that when you light the fire on the ground, that it will be heated on top, so you can bake in that oven, in that cylinder, tome. It has a din of a kli, and it's mekabel tumah. But vim lav tor. But if not, it doesn't have a din of a kli, and it's tor. And the Chum say no, it doesn't make a difference. It's tome regardless, even if it cannot be heated in that way. It doesn't have to be attached to the ground. As long as you can fire it up, even without having it considered attached to the ground, then it's still considered tome. And therefore, if you heat it up not through the ground, if it doesn't get the heat from the ground, if you put a floor on it, you put a bottom on it. Now, meaning if you put the fire on the ground, it would not heat up the oven. So you make a fire by putting a bottom on the cylinder and you put a fire there. That's the way you heat up the oven, for instance. It's still tummy. Meaning it doesn't have to be connected to the ground. It doesn't have to be part of the ground. If you heat it up in any other way, you can still function, you can bake in it, it's still tummy. What is the machlokes? Why do we say, what's the basis of saying that it has to have some connection to the ground or it doesn't have to have some connection to the ground? They're arguing in how to understand the following pasuk. It says that a oven or a stove that became tameh. It became tameh. Kli cheres has no tefillah in a mikvah. So it's yutas. It has to be broken. It has to be demolished. Tamei mehem utmeim yulachem. They're tameh and they remain tameh. Rabbi Yehuda Sover, he holds, what does it mean over here? Mechuser netitza tameh. So it says you have to demolish it. Now, demolishing is on something that's mechuber. You demolish a building, something that's mechuber to the ground. It has the lotion of netitza is applicable. It's yutatz, it's demolished. So mechuser netitza tameh, shein mechuser netitza tor. But if it's something that's not demolished, it's tor. So it only has a din of a kli. The tanner only has a din of a kli, and to be makabel tuma if it has some connection to the ground. So therefore, what's the connection to the ground that we're talking about? In this manner, that if you heat it up and put the fire on the ground, the oven is heated up, and you can bake in it, it has a connection to the ground, it's tummy. Otherwise, it's not a kli. And the Rabbanan says, the pasuk says, Tamei miyulachem. It says, it'll be tummy for you. Meaning, regardless, it's tameh to you. Now, it's tameh. Now, obviously, it doesn't mean that a kli that's tameh that you broke remains tameh. What it means, tameh yulachem mikol makom, mean any which way, whether it's connected to the ground or not connected to the ground, it's something that's tameh for you. Now, Gemara is going to explain how each one understands the diuk of the other one. V'Rabbanan nami haksiv yutats. The Rabbanan, what do they do with the pasuk that says yutats? So it has to be demolished. Doesn't that show you that it has some connection to the ground? The Gemara says, that's telling you just the opposite. The Rabbanan is saying, not that it has to have a connection to the ground. It doesn't have to have a connection to the ground. Because the pasuk says that Tmeim yulachem, it will be Tomei, Tmeim yulachem. What does it mean, yutat? It means even if there is some connection to the ground, you might think that in this manner, if it's heated on the bottom, that it becomes hot on top, that it's considered mechuber to the ground. Now, something which is mechuber to the ground, which is really connected to the ground, is not makabel tumah. A house is not makabel tumah from a tumas meses. It's only tzaras, but something mechuber to the ground is not makabel tumah in this way. So therefore, you might think that in this scenario where it's you heat it on the bottom, it's that if it's that you maskim al matu nisik milmala, you might think that it's mechuber to the ground. It's not makabel tumah. Even the Ramban say, even in such a case, it's makabel. Not that it has to be in this case, but even in such a case, it's makabel tumah. V'inach nami, what does Rabbi Yehuda do with the pasuk Tmeim yulachem? Rabbi Yehuda aksiv Tmeim yulachem. What does he do with that pasuk? The answer is Hahi Kel Rabbi Yehuda Mar Shmuel. He learns it from Yehuda Mar Shmuel. Dam Rabbi Yehuda Mar Shmuel machlokes behesek rishon. This that Rabbi Yehuda says, this requirement that it have some connection to the ground, that's only the first time you heat it up. The first time you heat it up, when it becomes a kli, as we said, that it only becomes hardened and really functional as a kli after the hesek rishon. That you need, that it's fired up, that it has its connection to the ground rather, that's only the first time the hesek rishon. But once it's already heated up, fired up, and it had that connection to the ground, then subsequently it is considered a kli, and even if it's totally suspended from the neck of a gamol, it's makabel tumah. And from that point on, it's not necessary. So really, therefore, the machlokes is only on the hesek rishon. And Omer Ula, the hesek rishon l'rabbanan, afilo tol b'savar gamol. So that's the machlokes, the hesek rishon, the first time it's fired up. The Rabbanan say even that does not require any connection to the ground. Rabbi Yehuda says the hesek rishon does have to have some connection to the ground, and it has to be mehusak milmata, that it's nisak milmala. But subsequently it doesn't. The Rabbanan say it never has to have that connection to the ground. So we're talking about this type of an oven. This type of an oven that we say, does it have a din of a kli, that Rabbi Yehuda says it only has a din of a kli if it's the hesek rishon was husek memaz nisak memal. And the Rabbanan say it does. Masif lo Ravashi ilhach yada mifli b'shivrei tanu or lifzik b'tanu gufa. Well, if that's the case, why are they arguing on the broken pieces of the tanur? If we're saying the machlokes is you had a tanur that the first time it was heated up, it was not connected to the ground. So Rabbi Yehuda says, therefore, it's not a kli. Rabbanan say, even if it wasn't connected to the ground, it is a kli. Well, if that's the case, why argue by the broken pieces? It's a machlokes. Do you consider a tanur that was not connected to the ground in any way by the hesek rishon, the first time it was heated up, is that a kli or not? Why introduce the shvarim, the broken pieces? So lifting b'tanur gufa, hash the tanur gufa l'Rabbi Yehuda l'avimona shvarim miboy. If Rabbi Yehuda says the tanur itself is not a kli, certainly not the broken pieces, so that can't be the machlokes. That's not the machlokes that we're discussing over here. Elam Ravashi loylo karami kor. It's like we said before. It is talking about the broken pieces, and they're talking about the broken pieces of the tanur, and the question is that is it usable for the issue is, does it have to retain the same use as it had before? And what we're talking about over here is that the pieces can be in some way used for the prior use, but not completely. So you can't use it as an oven. Initially, before it was broken, it was an oven. Now you have broken pieces of clay. It can't be used as an oven, but it can be used as tiles, and you can now cook things on it, or heat things on them, or bake on them. You can take dough, and you can stick it to these tiles and have it now baked on these tiles. So, V'ramer l'dvor of the Rabbi Yehuda Kalmar. And Rav Meir, he is saying, L'dvar Rav Yehuda. He's saying, according to the Shita of Rav Yehuda. According to me, he says, you don't need to retain the original function, as long as it's usable. So according to me, certainly these tiles will be mutter till metal till they're not muksa, because I don't hold that you need to retain the original use. But even according to you, that you say it does have to have the same use, you should at least be minded to me, then in this case, it's considered that it does retain the same use, because before you were able to bake with it, and you still can. Rav Yehuda says, no, Rav Yehuda says, no, it's not considered me'ein malachta. It's not the same. When it was an oven, before it was broken, it was heated from the inside. So that's the way you heated the oven. On the bottom, it was heated, and the inside of it, from the inside of it, was the fire came and rose within the inside of the cylinder. But over here, you're heating it from underneath. You have a tile, and you put the fire underneath the tile. Over there, the cylinder was upright. And over here, it's flat on the ground. So he says, even according to Rameir says, you should consider this to be mein malach. And Yehuda says, no, it's different. Hey, Rav Yosef Mishum Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov al Shivei Taner Yoshin Sheni Talmud B'Shabbos, he was made that on the broken pieces of a taner that was used already, that it's nitalmud b'Shabbos, it's not muksa v'al kisuya shein sorach beis yad, and that the lids do not need a handle. They're mutter even without a handle. They're not considered muksa. Ravina keman metatalina ina kisuya tanur damas machasya. He said, nowadays, according to whom are allowed to be metaltal the lids of the tanur, the covering of the tanur in the town of mas machasya? The Einlam Beis Achiza, because they don't have handles, and yet they're not muksa, Kiman, Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's going according to the sheet of Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov.